Hi, everyone. Welcome to our 7th Facebook Live on Musk Twitter. And maybe we'll do a little bonus about Kirsten Cinema and what my expectation is and what it means for her as well. But major developments today on Musk Twitter. So first of all, I just want to say everything we have spoken about in the past 6 Facebook Live sessions about Musk Twitter is coming to fruition. So I just want to start off with the overall message, which is this. If you have interest in returning to Twitter, you will have an opportunity to do so in the not too distant future under different management. For now, I'm asking everybody to stop using Twitter. If you want to keep your account up like I did, so you don't get impersonated, so you don't lose your followers, so be it. But do not supply this man content. This thing is blowing up. Breaking news right before we started this Facebook Live, Musk is doing away with completely the Safety and Trust Council of Twitter that was set up to monitor and keep the platform safe. Also, and this is why I'm really pushing people. In the past, I haven't really pushed people, but I'm really pushing you to not provide content. Yesterday, he sent a tweet about Anthony Fauci that will expose him to physical threats. The White House spoke out about that. Today, he attacked Yael Roth, who is the former head of safety, who is also LGBTQ, and attacked him in a very homophobic way. And he has had to flee his house for his own safety. So if you are still on Twitter and you are supplying content, you are keeping this thing going under Musk Twitter. It has nothing to do with Twitter itself. It has to do with his ownership and you enriching and keeping this going and making these people unsafe. And hey, listen, I get it. I had a huge following on Twitter, much bigger than here. It's an addicting thing to wake up every morning and turn on Twitter and see who's there and get the likes and everything else and the retweets. But for your own self and for everyone's safety, please stop providing him content. It won't be long now, okay? Everything that we have talked about is coming to fruition, but for now, please do not provide content to this man. I just want to also just state generally, as someone who observes the news very closely, I'm still getting the news, as I've advised you all to do, downloading apps onto my phone. I have the apps that I pay for, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, but there's plenty of ways to get news for free. CNBC will give you the finance news for free. ABC News, NBC News, CBS News, Reuters, the AP, all provide free news. You do not need to be on Twitter, nor does it serve the function that it prior did in having trending items that are newsworthy. So many voices have left already. The way the news is even being covered used to be very Twitter-centric. I'm noticing that that is no longer happening. So the major news today, in addition to all the other brouhaha, in the daily chaos, we've talked about the fact that this company's capitalization is such that he has a very short window, okay? And I'm not going to go through everything. I just want to let you all know, and Wendy Temple, if you're watching, maybe you can post the link. There's a way to watch the first 6 Facebook Lives that I've done if you are curious, but we're just going to pick up where we've been. I'm going to review a little bit. But remember last time, and I apologize for keeping it this way. I did try, some of you suggested to do it sideways, but then I'm kind of over, it doesn't look as good. So I'm going to just step aside for a little bit. We're not going to do as many sheets, but okay. So we know that this is the capitalization. Okay. He paid in excess of 46 billion. We know that there was 13 million of debt. We're going to talk about that next. About 7 billion from the Saudi prince and Larry Ellison, and then Musk, about 26 million. That's what he paid to buy Twitter. That was reported by Bloomberg, and we discussed it last time. The other important thing we discussed last time, this is within the 13 billion that the banks provided, this is the capitalization. Okay. And this 13 billion, or in the early episodes, we assumed that there was 1 billion that he had to pay in interest expense on this debt. We now know it's 1.2 billion. And as we discussed in our last segment, see, all of these things kind of follow on. There's already talks of restructuring. There are 6 banks that own this debt. One of them is Morgan Stanley, where I used to be co-head of distressed trading. They are already working on restructuring this debt. It was reported by Bloomberg. This bottom tranche, which they're stuck with, which is the lowest tranche, this kind of functions like a waterfall. These 2 are the most senior, then these bonds, then these bonds. And when the banks agreed to do this deal in April, and when Musk agreed to buy the company in April, the company was worth around 44 billion. And so the banks were just going to syndicate this out and make fees. By the time he closed and was forced to close, the company was worth 20 to 25 billion. And the banks were stuck with this. So what we discussed last time is this bottom layer, this 3 billion, which is the lowest level. In other words, this gets paid out, and then this, then this. What they were trying to do is say, the interest rate you're paying on this lowest level is 11.75%. We'll give you a lower level so you can lower the amount of interest expense in exchange for Tesla stock owned by Elon Musk. You have to give us that as collateral, and not just 1-to-1 as we talked about, some ratio, say, it depends, say 5-to-1. So there's a lot of pressure on Tesla stock to begin with. So that's the backdrop before we open the market today. A YouGov poll found for the first time that there is a negative perception, net negative perception of Tesla because of Musk, because of all the things he's doing. The same reason that these advertisers are fleeing. Remember we talked, there's 1.2 billion of debt that this company has to pay. That's like if you bought a house and you financed it, or you bought a car and you have a certain amount of interest you have to pay each month, he needs to do that as well. But he started out with about 4.8 billion of revenue. That's like if you made, say you made $480 a year. But he's already lost 90% of that is advertisements. He's already lost like somewhere in the range, in 1 quarter, he lost $500 million. So he's already down to say 3 to 4 billion. Being generous, but he still has to pay that 1.2 billion. So the banks are trying to say, okay, we're going to try to make it less, but you have to pay us, but you have to give us this additional stock. So a lot of you have said to me, well, people that own Tesla must be really pissed off. They must be like telling the board that this isn't okay. Doesn't the board have a responsibility? The board does have a responsibility. There are a lot of Tesla engineers that are working at Twitter. The brand is suffering heavily, as we talked about. And there have been requests in the public domain from shareholders to do something to boost the stock. And so last time we talked about the fact there was a short time where the stock had been going like this, and then backwards. It had been going like this, and then suddenly it started to go up. And my speculation had been that the company was buying back its shares because a lot of shareholders had asked them to do it. So it would artificially buoy the stock. That is over. And you started to see articles coming out in mass last week about shareholders just throwing up their arms and saying, I'm done with this. I'm done with this. He's erratic. He's devoting all his time elsewhere. So he set up a hotel in Tesla headquarters in San Francisco, told everyone they have to work there. He's under investigation by the San Francisco San Francisco government for basically making their headquarters into a hotel. He's being sued by multiple hundreds of cases, if not thousands, for wrongful termination. For example, saying people have to work in those headquarters, even if they're disabled and they can't, or if they have COVID issues that they can't. So he's got all sorts of entanglements. He's got advertisers leaving, offering them a 50% off sale now through year end to try to have some cash. So what happened today? Well, the stock market had a great day. If you own stock, the stock market was up big. Well, guess what wasn't up big? Tesla. Tesla is meeting its reckoning. And that matters for Musk. Did another little quick chart for us. Musk at one point, when the stock market was much higher and a lot of billionaires were worth a lot more, at one point he was worth just over 400 billion. He is now worth in the range, he's coming down to closer to 150 billion. I mean, don't cry for me, Argentina. I get it. But just on a relative basis, when he was making these stupid bids, he, like he did for Tesla, he had so much money on paper. Almost all of this guy's money or net worth comes from two things. One is SpaceX. SpaceX is worth roughly, on paper, it's not a public company, this is on paper valuation, 125 billion. He has very little to do with SpaceX. There's a woman running it who's exceptional. Everybody that you read accounts for says it's exceptional despite him, not because of him. They have to handle him, but she handles him. He has a 40% stake. So on paper only, again, this is not a public company, this is just a paper valuation, his stake in SpaceX of his net worth is worth 50 billion. The rest of his net worth is almost entirely Tesla shares, of which he owns 14%. So when you have a company that is down over 56% so far this year, down close to 30% since he closed on the purchase of Twitter, through nothing to do with Tesla, having him hurt the reputation of his own company, which is exactly what we spoke about in this Facebook Live series, that this guy cannot help himself, that he was going to tarnish his brand. And that is exactly what is happening. So why does that matter? In addition to his personal net worth being crushed, remember we talked about the banks wanting to get his stock as collateral as part of this restructuring. So what happens when the stock trades down and you have to give collateral? You have to give even more collateral. And there will be triggers such that if he does this deal, if the stock continues to trade down, the banks will have the option to call their collateral and flush it into the market. So that will put even additional risk into this stock. Basically what is happening is, in addition to the excuse me, I'm just going through our charts that we've had. In addition to the 26 million of equity that he has in this, and the other 4 billion, don't forget, we talked about this early on, he already sold 4 billion of Tesla stock to pump into Twitter for short-term capital needs. In addition to all of that, he's going to have to pledge his own Tesla stock, and he's just, the way he's acting, he's losing advertisers so quickly, this thing is cratering. We've talked about the red flag of liquidity needs. And if you don't have advertisers, the money isn't coming in the door. That's why he gave them 50% off, because this company is hemorrhaging cash. There is no Twitter 2.0. There is no plan. For the third, fourth, fifth time today, he launched Twitter Verified. That is, it's going to be a speck of like dumbos that are going to sign up for this to get their little check mark. Last time he did it, he got 140,000 people. A lot of them were spam accounts that went on to impersonate public figures or corporations or politicians. This time they're going to have a different color check, and they're going to be more careful. So say they get 100,000 people to do it and they pay $8 each. It's nothing. That's $800,000 a month. This company owes 1.2 billion. It is nothing. So we've talked about this, the different ways this company was going to go down. And we are getting to that point. at some point, I believe one of two things is going to happen. He is going to be under enough pressure, believe me. He is hearing from Twitter's board right now. And they are saying, Tesla's board right now, cut the SHIT here, folks. Like, you are blowing up this company. People are going to want to sell their Teslas. They're not going to buy Teslas. We have a negative perception of our company for the first time because of you solely. So that is happening. He's also watching his net worth crumble. I know, again, like, don't cry for me, Argentina, 402 billion to 160 billion, but still, he is, he doesn't have cash kind of assets. He has this totally illiquid SpaceX and he has Tesla stock, and his net worth is basically coming down. So he might wake up in the morning and just say, this is too much of a hassle. I got booed off the stage in San Francisco. I mean, I don't know, Dave Chaparral seems like a perfect guy for him to be with anyway, but I got booed off the stage. People don't like me. People don't like me on Twitter. He might wake up one morning, but who knows? Just like Putin hasn't pulled out of Ukraine, even though he's losing, even though Trump didn't get his act together until we got it together for him. You don't know with these guys that are autocrats. As I wrote about in the weekly list, if you go to my website, theweeklylist.org, these autocrats that are isolated and surrounded by yes people, he's got to have some discord and start to feel some personal pain and some to the chaos he is causing. And that is now happening. The other thing that can happen that can cause this thing to come apart. Again, I talked about the banks and the fact that they're stuck with this debt. And they are watching this company crumble too. They booked a $500 million loss at the time they had to close the deal. This bank debt and the bonds are worth significantly less than now. I was co-head of distress trading at Morgan Stanley. They're one of the leads. I can tell you Morgan Stanley is a very savvy player. So is Bank of America. And I would be shocked if they're not already in conversation with people about some sort of restructuring. If we get to a point where Musk is either not paying or if we don't know what the covenants are, this is a private deal. If he's violating covenants of any sort, that would give them a rationale to call in their loans or force him to start restructuring if he doesn't have the cash to pay. So 1.2 billion is basically, it's 100 million a month that he has to pay of interest on these bank loans. So a lot of things could come together, but the important thing is overall, remember we said at the time this company, the deal was closed, this company was worth about half of what Musk paid for. It is now worth significantly less. And these banks, this 13 billion needs to get paid out in whole before his stake is worth anything. So we are approaching the point, if we're not there already, we're given what this company is worth. Is it worth 15 billion, 16 billion, 13 billion? We don't know. We're not under the hood, but it's worth a lot less than 22 billion when he closed. What that means, it doesn't mean, and this is what I want to be really clear about, it doesn't mean you're going to wake up and Twitter will be closed. Companies go bankrupt all the time. Macy's has been bankrupt. Delta Airlines has, not Delta, but the majority of airlines have been bankrupt. Companies go through bankruptcy. What ends up happening is the ownership changes. The platform stays the same. Companies stay the same. But the people that were the equity lose everything. And usually the people that own the debt, a lot of times become the holders of the equity. They become the owners of the company. So that's a very Econ 303 way of saying Twitter is not going away. Who owns Twitter is going to change, which has been my premise throughout this time. I'm just surprised how quickly he's undoing it. That my premise is that he's going to blow this thing up, and he's either going to walk away from it because he's losing so much of his personal net worth, or because he has no choice, because the Tesla board is going to call him out on it. And somebody else, a private equity fund, a who knows who else is circling the orbit, speaking to the banks already about wanting to own this company at a much lower level that sees potential in Twitter done the right way or done a better way. I can say I personally spent so much time on Twitter, especially during the Trump era, and it's like an addiction. Like any other addiction, you wake up, a lot of you have said the same. During the Trump era, you looked at your phone for the news to see what was going on, to see what was trending. In the 6 weeks since I've went off, once in a while, I'll check what is trending. And now I've noticed it's like worthless to get your information that way. But the other thing I've noticed in my personal life is how much better it is. I mean, granted, I'm a public figure, but I would get death threats and harassment in my mail, emails, every day because of stuff on Twitter. I don't get that at all because I'm not on Twitter. So that place, even predating him and much worse during him, was already like a pit. And so whoever buys it, we can only hope that they're going to do better. So with that, what I'd like to do is take your questions. You know how we all do this. I'm going to read your questions that you should write as comments right behind me, and I will see them as your comments. And then at the end, if you want to stick with me, I'm just going to talk a little bit about Kirsten Sinema and my thoughts there. Do you think Twitter will go back to being publicly owned? It potentially, what could happen is in the short term, a private equity firm or tech investors could buy it, and then their exit would be to have it go public again. So eventually, most likely. In the short term, after Musk, not necessarily. That might not be the next step. But eventually, yes. What is with Dorsey telling him to go forth with the Twitter files? Yeah, I've told you all, Jack Dorsey, I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. He's got this new platform. I would not go near it. He is no friend of anyone other than Elon Musk's. He's like his little side puppy dog. So I think, they're friends behind the scenes and stay away. Are you aware that Elon Musk has dissolved? Yes, I talked about that. He dissolved the Trust and Safety Council tonight. Thank you. And that is, important. As I've said, you all please get off or stay on and stop providing content to this man. Thank you. How do we combat Musk's hate speech and disinformation? Very easily, doing exactly what I'm telling you here. If you do not provide content to this man, then what has been happening for the last 6 weeks will only hasten. Twitter as a platform under Musk will become irrelevant. You're not going to stop the hate there, but if you do not participate in it, it becomes akin to Trump Social and Parler and every other homogeneous, far-right, failing platform. This is what I've said to you since the beginning. The only thing that gives Musk Twitter value is reasonable folks like us staying on it. If we stop giving him content, it is just Trump Social, worthless. There is nothing you can do about misinformation and disinformation. We've talked about in other episodes about how he's under threat from the European Union, that he has to clean up his act, or he could lose them and be blacked out in the European Union. We've talked about the FTC here, and also that he's under, prior to his ownership, that Twitter has an agreement with the FTC about privacy, protecting privacy, and about moderation. So if he doesn't follow that, he could be in trouble in the US as well. But he's not doing anything he's supposed to do, and he doesn't care about the rules, just like any authoritarian. So the best thing you can do is stay away and make him irrelevant. I have opinions about some of the people that are still supplying content, and I think they personally are addicted and they can't do without the attention. Listen, I went through a withdrawal not being on Twitter myself. Was a much bigger presence. But, I got off, go to lunch with my friends. I'm involved with my community. There are other ways that you can fill your life other than social media. And Facebook, luckily I have you all on Facebook, which is a better organizing tool. Facebook has all of its problems. This is a marriage of convenience for us. I hope all of the social media companies are learning a lesson thanks to Musk. How do you permanently delete your Twitter account? I'm going to let somebody else post a link. There are links to permanently delete, and maybe someone can post that as a comment. As I've said, I personally am leaving mine up for now for two reasons. One, so people know where to find me, and also so someone doesn't impersonate me and set up an Amy Siskin account and start tweeting as me. News media continues to use, but in a different way. And that's what I was commenting on. The media used to be super driven, and their stories were Twitter driven, and their quotes were, and I'm noticing that is happening less and less. So it's becoming, this, again, it's not going to happen overnight. It's 6 weeks. It's going to become far less relevant. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Kyrsten Sinema very briefly, and then at the end, I will take questions either on her or on Twitter Musk. So those of you who were following me on Twitter or were following me here, I had written a thread based on a conversation with a friend who lives in Arizona and was in her same circle. She was a triathlete, and her wife, I guess they live together, but they're not married, also a big competitive triathlete. And I had a friend in those circles. And what I've heard, in addition to the fact that Sinema had alienated almost everyone in her circles, who else does this sound like? That she has, this sounds like Musk and Trump, and she has these grandiose opinions of herself. And rather than saying I grew up in the school of hard knocks, she had a really tough childhood, instead of wanting to pull up others, she's turned into the exact same thing that these other people have, surrounding herself with fewer people and people that want to give her money to do their bidding. I worked on Wall Street. Not everyone on Wall Street is evil, but she did get a lot of money from Wall Street people to be the holdout vote for not changing how capital gains were paid. So she has a lot of people like telling her things she wants to hear. And from what I've heard, and I tweeted this in January, she believes she's going to be president. Stop. I know you're all laughing. It doesn't make sense. But when I wrote that, everyone started repeating it back, because now it makes more sense. She believes that because while she was going in Congress and other times while she was commuting, she did these night degrees where she got her MBA or whatever else, you can do to get degrees at night online, that she's smarter than everyone else. This is, again, what I hear from people in her circle. And because she's smarter than everyone else, she believes that she uniquely understands that there's a place for a politician in the middle, and that she is going to run for president as somebody in the middle and win the election. I honest to God, this is what I have been told. And so when she changed parties and became independent, I thought, that makes sense. When she said, I might not run for re-election for Senate in Arizona, that makes sense. Because yes, she has put Democrats in a bad place if it is a three-way race in 2024. But she was going to lose her primary if she remained a Democrat, and she would never win a primary as a Republican. So her only chance to stay in the Senate would be to be an independent, which if you're Lisa Murkowski and you're from a family in Arizona, in Alaska, and you've done enough that your name has that recognition, that might make sense. If you're in Arizona, which literally just had an election a month ago where a Democrat won for governor, a Democrat won for Senate, and your thesis is this is not a Democrat state, this is an independent state, like you won as a Democrat, Mark Kelly won as a Democrat, Mark Kelly just won again as a Democrat, Katie Hobbs just won as a Democrat. What am I missing here? again, and a lot of these things like Musk Twitter doesn't make sense. Putin's invasion of Ukraine doesn't make sense. This is what she believes. So watch it from that perspective. And it is bad for Democrats, yes. Oh, but the good news is she's not caucusing as a Republican. Whether, we're up by 1 or 2 seats, whatever it is, we're up, we control the Senate. And we don't have this 50-50 thing. We have a 51-49 thing, which gives us a lot of benefits. And she, this is her exercising her power. So with that, yes, I mean, Murkowski is a woman of character. I don't agree with her politics, but she stands up to her party. She has won twice going against without getting her party nomination. You don't understand her, just like you don't understand Musk or Trump or Putin, because some of these things don't make sense when people do things that are irrational. And she has, again, I only took a couple semesters of psychology in college, but delusions of grandeur is the best way I would put it. Yes, she's fiercely disliked in her own state. She would lose either primary. A lot of you said she's going to run as a Republican. She would lose as a Republican. Why does the mainstream media call her a moderate? Because she's betrayed herself. She's portrayed herself as in the middle when it's not really in the middle. She's just trying to find a way to make herself relevant. She's not caucusing, and she said she will not caucus as a Republican. So, it seems Musk has regularly made statements about cryptocurrency over the last couple of years that negatively impacted its value. Cryptocurrency, another lesson I'm going to give you all. If you don't understand it, don't invest in it. Yeah, that is a whole hellhole that Musk was in. The other thing that has happened, this happened last time, Musk was talking about making Twitter into a bank, and Kathy Wood was saying he's going to make it into a bank, and Sherrod Brown put forward a bill he co-sponsored a couple of weeks ago that is going to shut that loophole. Can I talk about Lake next time? Yes. Are there any, I'm just going to give everyone one more chance if you have any questions about Musk Twitter before we sign off for the night, or else I'll just try to answer them. Okay, everyone. So thank you. And again, just to recap, this is happening exactly as we predicted. Twitter is not going away. Musk Twitter is going away. That's an important nuance. People freak out. Oh my God, we don't want to lose Twitter. Twitter is not going away. His ownership, Musk Twitter, is going away. So my ask of all of you is to please stop giving him content. If you are giving him content, you are not doing some bold move for democracy to protect, like people portraying it. No, you're just addicted and you need to stop. You're only helping him stay afloat and create an unsafe environment where Anthony Fauci, where former employees having to leave their homes for physical threat because of what he's putting on there. So please do not be part of the problem. Please stop tweeting. Adios, friends. Good night.